Back with Senator Josh Hawley, the author of an important book, The Tyranny of Big Tech, and it's so important that the left has been trying to block it. They tried to prevent it from getting published in the first place. It's like the old movies banned in Boston, which means you've got to see the movie. Now, we're talking, Senator Hawley, about the problem of big tech and of censorship. I think there's no doubt about what the problem is, but normally you'd say, all right, well, why don't we pass some laws? Why don't we repeal the Section 230 protection? The problem, as I see it, is that none of that is actually going to happen as long as you've got a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, a Democratic Congress, and these are the cheerleaders for censorship. We can't reasonably expect any legislation to go forward in this environment, right?
I think it's going to be tough, and we've got to look to find progress where we can find it on Capitol Hill. And I think wherever I just say for my part, I'm willing to work with anybody to move forward an agenda that will actually put power back in the hands of the American people and break up the power of these big tech monopolies. I think there's some opportunity to do that, but I think you're right, Dinesh, that where we're really going to have to push right now is we've got to push in the states. I can say this as a former state attorney general. With those antitrust suits, those trust-busting suits that the states are filing, those are vitally important. Those need to go forward. I'm cheering on states like Texas and Florida and others that are talking about penalizing and even fining the big tech companies if they engage in censorship and engage in viewpoint discrimination. I mean, these are important efforts. We've got to look for every front we can in the courts, in the states, and on Capitol Hill to challenge these companies' monopoly and try to put the American people back in charge.
I was looking at the Florida law, which basically says that if you censor someone who is a candidate or a statewide official or somebody running for office, you could be subject to some fines. But I say, why not go further? Why not have a state, whether it's Texas or Missouri, that basically says, look, if you censor a citizen of the state, and you're not able to provide, you meaning here Twitter or Facebook, a proper explanation for why you did this, what was the basis of the decision, then you face a $1 million fine. I mean, wouldn't that stop this in its tracks? Wouldn't that send a chilling message to these people? And they need to be chilled because it appears that they live in some kind of elite bubble where they don't really care. I mean, they show up for hearings. It looks like they treat it as sort of a joke. The hearing is kind of a nuisance that they have to deal with. They go right back to doing what they were doing before, or they set up these bogus oversight boards in which, it's kind of like a company president turns to his own board of directors. Do you guys agree with me? Yes, you do. Okay, wonderful. I'm going to do this. So you've got this sort of insider operation in which if you or I are banned, we don't even know who banned us. We don't know why. We don't know on what basis the decision was taken. I mean, no other company that I can think of in America worked. Delta can't cancel your flight without giving you some explanation. If you bought your ticket, you can call them up and scream at them and they'll make it right. Not with these guys.
No, that's exactly right. And that's because with every other business in America, every other media platform, you have the right to go to court, especially if you have a term of service with them, a contract with them. If they violate that, you could say, wait a minute. You can't just cancel my ticket if you're an airline. You can't just defame me on the air. I'm going to take you to court. These companies, these tech companies, get that special deal from the federal government. This is one of the ways they've gotten to be so powerful, that special immunity. That's the famous or infamous Section 230. So to your question about the states, I cheer on the states in trying to find ways to give citizens their day in court, to give them some kind of power. I personally think that one of the reforms we need to make, vital reform, is to make these companies' terms of service enforceable. Allow a customer who has been deplatformed to take this company to court. I mean, you want to change their behavior real quick, make them subject to lawsuits. That'll change their behavior. Make them, their terms of service actually enforceable. Make them prove and demonstrate that what they did wasn't political viewpoint discrimination. That'll change their behavior really fast.
Let me ask you as a last question, a kind of a broader question, which is, I noticed that when companies, for example, offend the sensibilities of the left goes berserk. And by that, I mean they show up at the company, they threaten them, we're going to call you a racist. There's all kinds of activism on the left in resistance to this stuff. I don't see anything comparable on the right. It seems that somehow there's a temperamental difference between us and them. And so if our free speech rights are violated, we write a stinging op-ed in National Review, but we don't get out there. We don't have the same energy. We can't frighten these companies into submission evidently in the way that the left can. Do you think that we need a kind of newly mobilized Republican activism that takes to the streets kind of the same way the left does?
Well, I certainly think that we need folks to stand up and to demand their rights and their freedoms, and to say that we're just not going to roll over for big tech. I mean, you mentioned the oversight board, the fake Facebook court, as I call it, that basically is just Facebook saying, we'll do whatever we want to do, whenever we want to do it. We want to deplatform Donald Trump, we'll do it. We don't have to give a reason because we're Facebook and you just have to take it. And I think we've got to get to a point where the American people say, we're not going to take it. We're not just going to say that you can control our lives and you can control our personal information and you can control our politics, and we just accept it. So I think that, by the way, I think you are seeing this from voters. I think this is one of the reasons that Republican senators, in my short 2 years on Capitol Hill, Republican senators have really begun to change their position on these issues, and it's because of their voters. Their voters are saying to them, you have to do something about these monopolies, and the voters are right.
Thank you, Senator Hawley, for coming on the show. Folks, you got to get his book, The Tyranny of Big Tech, published by Regnery. It's an awesome book, and this has been, for me, a very interesting conversation. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.